Hi YouTube, it's Kathy, and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for May 4th through 10th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 4 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 1 book. The first book that I read this week is The Thrashers. This is a book that I picked up as an ARC and then completely forgot about what it was, but I had set a calendar notification being like, hey, remember to read this ARC by the pub date, which was this Tuesday, so I did that. This is about a group of friends who have been dubbed the Thrashers because the main person in this group has the last name of Thrasher and everyone else seems to be kind of a hanger-on, at least from the outside of the friend group. And our protagonist is a girl who is actually his best friend, but out of the 5 of them, she's kind of the odd one out because she lives on the wrong side of town. Her family's not rich like the other families. This group has the reputation of like picking up different friend members and then eventually they just kind of get ghosted out of the group. And because this keeps getting pointed out to her, she's always wondered if this is going to eventually happen to her. Oh yeah, and all 3 girls in this group, her included, are all kind of in love with the main guy in the group. With all of that background out of the way, we come to the start of a school year where they're going to be going back to school. However, at prom last year, somebody that they used to hang out with, kind of begrudgingly because she wouldn't just leave them alone, actually ended her own existence, and as the school year starts, they're kind of called into the police station because the police are trying to pursue criminal harassment charges, thinking that they had something to do with this person's death. From there, we come to see them being figuratively and literally potentially haunted by the ghost of this young girl. And we try to figure out what exactly happened and why they think they have evidence that they did bad things to her. This was fun times. It kind of went paranormal at one point, which I was definitely not expecting, mostly because I didn't know what to suspect at all because I went in without knowing anything about the synopsis. And overall, I ended up enjoying this one. The next book I read was a nonfiction book called Read Dangerously, and my issue with this one is it didn't really, for me, live up to what the subtitle promised, although it did eventually get there in the end. The subtitle is The Subversive Power of Literature in Troubled Times. Going into this, I thought this was going to be a nonfiction directly talking about that exact topic, and I guess that's partly my fault because I didn't know anything about this writer leading up to this, and this is probably the 4th book in kind of this series of books that's kind of memoirs but also talks on different subjects, or at least that's what I'm led to believe from the introduction. What this turns out to be is a list of different letters to the author's deceased father, where she's grouped together different writers that she's read in subversive times or would be subversive to read in politically charged times, as well as kind of memoir information about what's going on in her life as she's writing these letters. She does eventually get around to talking about the topic directly in these letters, but it's kind of a lot of meandering between, oh, I read this book the other day, or I remember reading this book 20 years ago, and Dad, I want to tell you about it. Although she's originally from Iran, so she does not call him Dad. She actually refers to him as either Babayan or Babajan. This is how it's spelt, and I don't speak that language, so I don't know if I'm saying it correctly. Which translates, I believe, from Persian to Dearest Father. And for me, because of this framing that I wasn't expecting, this book was just kind of okay. It took me a really long time to get into it, but then I would hit these passages where I just couldn't stop reading, and I was really interested in what was being said, so take that as you will. I'm just one person out here trying to read books. On to what I watched this week. The last time we talked, I had just started the 3rd season of Luther, and I actually finished that season. I finished the 4th season, I finished the 5th season, and then I tried to go on to the next episode of the 6th season because I thought there were 6 seasons, and nope, that's just where the show ends. Granted, there are some cyclical things that kind of tie it up at the end, so I kind of saw that, but I also, for whatever reason, thought there were 6 seasons, so I thought there was going to be more to it, and there was going to be more of a resolution than just kind of, oh, this happened in the first episode and something similar has happened in this episode. Okay, cool. This show is just a wild ride. This cop is trying to solve crimes at the same time as like dealing with underbelly people and trying to keep things in order, and people are trying to kill him for reasons. It's a lot, it's messy, it's fun, I enjoyed it, but yeah, it was very different from the previous 2 shows I watched. In trying to keep with the theme of watching British crime shows with one title, the next show I picked up was based solely on the fact that the main actor is Kenneth Branagh, and that's Wallander. This one's a little bit different in that it is a British crime show, but it is set in Ystad, which is in Sweden. So it's funny because obviously everyone in it is talking with British accents, but anytime you see text on the screen that would be just out and about or in somebody's emails or whatever, it's in Swedish. And unfortunately for this show, I only got 3 episodes in before I went, nope, this is not going to be for me. Which is really sad because, like I said, Kenneth Branagh is the lead. The Tom, whose last name I always forget because there's so many famous Toms right now, who plays Loki, is one of the cops that works with him. And in the very first episode, we have a very young Nicholas Hoult. Because, you know, this is from 2008. In the very first episode, I got a little bit uncomfortable because this is a British show taking place in Sweden, but a lot of the plot had to do with this person who was kind of obsessed with what I believe was overblown history about Native Americans. And it felt odd to me that a character in this context would really be doing the types of things that Native Americans were accused of doing. And yet at the same time, as the episode was going on, nobody kind of talked about how this was a terrible practice or really looked down upon this population. So I kind of had this weird feeling about it, but I couldn't really be like, here's the line that makes me go, maybe not for me. Then I can't remember what happened in the second episode, but I don't remember there being anything that I was like, oh, holy crap, I can't watch this. And then in the third episode came the transphobia. So midway through that episode, I was like, ooh, unless this turns around, I'm not gonna be able to watch this anymore. And then by the end of that episode, that character's been called all sorts of slurs that we do not call people. Also, don't actually know if that person was trans, because obviously the writers didn't know what they were talking about when they wrote this character. So yeah, despite being excited about the cast and the beautiful views from this place in Sweden, I was like, yeah, no, I can't watch this. In trying to keep with this one-word title British show, I then went on to watch one episode of Rebus. Now, I've actually read a book from this series before, although it was years ago, so I cannot tell you which one I possibly read to. And the major draw for watching this show is it takes place in Edinburgh, which is my favorite city. It was also filmed about 26 years ago, so it was kind of fun to see Edinburgh pre me ever going there. Unfortunately, even though we're kind of told that the main character has a heart of gold, he is just another one of those cops that you're like, you're not actually the greatest of people. And I had a real problem with his voiceover being like, yes, I've really saved this one person, although she still does sex work, which is her right to do it, that's fine. But then it's like the one person we see him have a connection with, and by the end of the episode she's dead. Not only that, but he has to go ID her body, and when he does that, instead of her being covered up to the neck with a sheet, we see her full naked torso, which was just not needed at all. That seems incredibly disrespectful to the dead, actually. Strangely enough, in this episode we also saw a corpse's appendage. So I just don't know if they were trying to draw more people in with nudity back in 1999 on British TV, but there you go. And look, I'm not a prude. Obviously there's nudity on TV and film all of the time, but in these certain circumstances, it didn't need to be there. After those two failures, I went, okay, maybe I need to pivot away from one-word British cop shows, because obviously I'm not finding anything as good as what I've watched previously. So I kind of took a look through and I was like, oh, I think that's Greg Davies. And based on that, I watched all 3 seasons of The Cleaner. Now this one is kind of cop show adjacent in that we are following a crime scene cleaner played by Greg Davies, who, if you've watched Taskmaster, is the Taskmaster. And this is a show that is written and starring him as a crime scene cleaner and all of the shenanigans he gets up to while doing his job. I found this absolutely delightful and I cackled so many times, which was actually pretty hilarious and creepy for my roommates who were upstairs watching kind of a creepy show. And there was a scene where the characters are like in this abandoned building. Then you just hear this cackling from somewhere, and that cackling was me. Slight spoilers for the first episode, but I'm using it as an example of the ridiculous situations he finds himself in. I was midway through the first episode. I actually had to stop halfway through this episode because I was laughing so hard and send my best friend a message saying, so I didn't think that at the start of this day, or even at the start of this episode, that by midway through this episode, I was going to be witnessing a duet between Greg Davies and Helena Bonham Carter, and they were singing It Had to Be You, as she is trying to take a poop on the toilet and holding him at gunpoint, and because there's a door between them, they have to sing so that she knows that he is not escaping. I very much enjoyed this show, and I have a feeling it's going to be one of those shows that if I can't think of what else to watch, then I'm just going to throw it back on in the background as I'm cross-stitching, because honestly that's most of my TV watching is actually just listening to the show and cross-stitching. And looking up occasionally, because I know there's going to be gorgeous views, or there's a visual pun or something I should probably know is going on visually. As for the movie I watched this week, my roommate had a real craving to watch something from the 1990s, which the joke was on her immediately because this movie is from 2000, but we put on What Women Want, which is a movie I definitely saw around the time that it came out, but literally the only thing I could remember was the French poodle saying, "Monsieur, I need to pee." So this is a Mel Gibson movie. He works in advertising and he grew up with a bunch of women around him and he's kind of a womanizer and he thinks that women think that he is the best thing ever. And then a freak accident happens and suddenly he can hear everything that women are thinking, and it's not necessarily things that he has ever considered they would think about him or just life in general. At first this really sucks for him because he can't shut them up, but then he starts using it to his own advantage. One of the things I love about watching movies around this time frame is you go back and you're like, oh, this person's in this movie, look how little they are. For example, TJ Tyne shows up at some point, Sarah Paulson's in this, Lisa Edelstein's in this. Like, just a bunch of people that I've definitely seen before in other things are here, and it's delightful. As for the book I listened to this week, that was The Girl Who Came Home. When I saw that Hazel Gaynor had a new historical fiction, I was like, sure, I will put a hold on that. I don't even want to know what it's about. I didn't even fully read the cover, and then immediately upon starting to listen to it, I found out that it's historical fiction about the Titanic. Which, if you were here a couple of months ago, I think it was, I actually read another historical fiction about the Titanic by Deepa Jagapudar and really enjoyed that one. And I knew I was going to love this one because I love Hazel Gaynor's writing, and I'm happy to say that I was correct. This book follows several different people, either people that are in New York, people that are in County Mayo, which is a county in Ireland that several of the characters come from, because there's this group of 14 characters who are actually traveling from County Mayo, and they've booked third-class tickets on the Titanic's first ever, and as it turns out, only ever transatlantic trip. If you can even call it that, because it didn't make it all the way across, etc., we know this. Besides these several points of view back in 1912, we also have a point of view of this woman named Grace in 1982. A little bit before that, but mostly 1982. And Grace is the great-granddaughter of the main person that we're following back in 1912. It also turns out that as Grace is celebrating her birthday with her great-grandmother, she finds out that her birthday coincides with the sinking of the Titanic, but obviously about 50 years later. And her great-grandmother decides to actually finally tell her the story because she never talked to anybody in the family about that trip except for her husband, who has passed on. Grace was actually studying journalism, but a couple of years ago her father suddenly passed and her mother has health complications, so she actually moved home to take care of her mother. But as she's hearing Maggie's story, she's going, wow, I need to write this article, with her permission, obviously. Now, were there two major plot points that I saw coming and I was like, this is going to be a delightful thing that happens in this book? Yes. Did I still want to cry several times throughout this book? Yes. The author did do something very, very clever where I could tell that there was a chance that one of the characters that we're hearing about was using an anglicized name and was going to be the same character as a different character that we're also talking about. I hope I'm being vague enough that I do not wreck it for you if you happen to read this. But I just happen to know that that was an anglicized name for this other name, so I was like, oh, immediately, that's going to be the thing. That's going to be so good. And it was something that was revealed basically at the very end of the book, which was absolutely delightful. Because I think the book was leading us up to think of a completely different kind of reunion between characters, but giving the audience a few different clues as to why that's a misdirect. In any case, like I've probably already said, I really enjoyed this one. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!